Hello there, wonderful Magic players. Today we're going to have a look at Mono White, and we're going to look at this from a free-to-play perspective, just as we did with the black decks. We're going to try to avoid using our rare wildcards, but for White I actually would suggest that you consider using your mythic wildcards, as there are two really good, currently really good mythic rares that are aggressively costed and that could probably work in even in the future when standard rotates and we get some kind of extended like format with or standard plus or whatever it's going to be called. I think that you can safely spend your mythic wildcards here, especially if you like the archetype, especially if you like white weenie decks, because I don't think that you can really, unless you splash another color, I think it's really hard to create a monocolored good white control deck. So you're going to be pigeonholed into building a weenie deck, a white weenie deck, and that's what I'm going to try to build here. And there's actually two strategies, I think, when you're building this. One which involves a bit more rare cards, which is the standard way of building white weenies with ground forces with cards like Dauntless Bodyguard and the Loxodon guy, which pumps your team, and that's a fine strategy, but it's a bit uncommon and rare heavy, I think. Unless you really want to dive deep into the white weenie territory and spend your rare wild cards. My suggestion is that if you're going to build your first white weenie deck, that you instead go for something like an all flyers deck. That's something that I've experimented a lot with, and I think that that kind of deck is, first of all, it's really easy to get going because it's almost exclusively commons and uncommons. I don't think you need a single rare in that archetype, and if you like the deck, you can still make it better with a couple of rares. I'll make some suggestions at the end of the video how you can build that kind of deck, and also I'm going to upload a video where I play that exact kind of deck that I'm suggesting, a only flyers white weenie deck. So the first card, Dauntless Bodyguard. I really like this card. I don't like to play against it, but it's a really good card. And I remember back when Kamigawa came out, and there was like a big discussion around creature creep, where you had a 2/2 for 1 white mana without any drawbacks except it being legendary maybe. But nowadays we're seeing 2/1s all the time without any drawback, and this even has a really strong ability. The bodyguard ability is really strong. The only problem or the only downside with this card is that if you play it first, it's basically a vanilla 2/1. It can't protect anything. So it's a bit awkward in that you need to play it after the thing that it's protecting for it to be effective. But it's still a really good card, and even if you play it out as a 2/1, you really haven't lost much, because a 2/1 body on turn 1 will get some damage done. So, moving on, I know a lot of people like Ajani's Welcome, but I really don't like this card, and the reason for that is that I think that to an extent every interaction between two Magic decks is an kind of an exchange of value, where you're trying to outvalue your opponent. Even when you're doing aggro versus aggro, you need to be, in most cases, very effective with your cards, and Ajani's Welcome really isn't an effective card. It gains your life, but it's essentially a lost card, since if you don't have cards with this card, it doesn't do anything. If you have played out your entire hand, then this just sits here until you draw your next creature. It doesn't do anything by itself. So having something like a life-linking creature, or a creature that gives you life in some way, is much more useful in my opinion, even if you're playing something like Ajani's Pridemate, which grows every time you gain life. I think it's better to have those lifelink abilities tied to creatures instead, so that if you draw it late game, you're not going to be that sad if you draw a creature. But if you draw an Ajani's Welcome late game and you have an empty board, it doesn't do anything for you. Yeah, that's my opinion on that card. moving on. Healer's Hawk, great card I think, and I think you start with 3 or something if you when you've got the what deck is this? This is in one of the starter decks. I think it's 2 or 3 of this in one of the starter decks, and so you only need to build 1 or 2 of this to complete the set. And it's a really good card. It's both good if you're going like the kind of standard way of doing it, having ground troops and a few flyers, if that's your thing, or if you're going with the strategy which I suggest, which involves only almost exclusively commons and uncommons, and going for a flying strategy, this works as well. So having a playset of Healer's Hawk is really good, and it's something I can really suggest you build to complete this playset as soon as possible. Another great card, Gird for Battle. I know this is so overlooked, and I don't know why. It's so much value for 1 white. Putting 2+1 counters on 2 target creatures. The only problem with this card is that if you don't have 2 creatures, you only get 1+1+1 counter. Because it says up to, so you can actually cast this even if you don't have 2 creatures. But except for that, it's such value, and it's so good, I think, compared to, for instance, there's an aura for 2, which gives you +2/+2 on 1 creature. This splits it up on 2 creatures, which makes it so that even if 1 creature gets removed, you still have half your value from your Gird for Battle. And also, this only costs 1 white, so compared to that aura, it's basically twice as effective mana-wise for even better value. So it's such a great pickup. I think I still don't know why not more white weenie decks runs this. It has worked great for me, at least. Really great card, I think. Duskborn Sky Marcher. This card is not the card you'd initially build, and it basically only works if you're going for an all fire white deck. And it's a great card in that archetype because you can start with basically 12 cards which are all flyers for 1 white mana. There's the Duskborn Sky Marcher, the Healer's Hawk, and then there's another 1/2 flyer without any abilities for 1 white mana. And being able to consistently drop a flyer on turn 1 is really, really strong, especially coupled with the fact that the current free mulligan system, where it tries to give you the most equally weighted hand as far as lands is concerned, which means that you can run something low. Like in the deck that I ran 18 planes, and it worked great. Like if I start with 2 planes, I know that I don't need to draw any more planes for the entire game, because half of my cards cost 1 and the other half cost 2. So I won't need any more mana than that, and it's still going to work out. So another great card, but not the first card I would build, even for that archetype. Moving on to Hunted Witness. This is another great card, and I think this is about as much value as it can get out of. I'm probably going to be proven wrong in the future, of course, but as much value as you can get for a 1 mana card, I think. You drop it down. It's a 1/1 body. It's not that strong, but it can probably jump something, or maybe it has at least a chance to do something. It can be buffed, and even if it's killed, it creates a even stronger creature, a 1/1 lifelinker. Yeah, really great card if you're going for ground troops in the common slot. Of course, there are maybe some better cards in the uncommon slot, but for the common slot, I think this is one of the best cards that you can run for that kind of archetype. Legion's Landing is another great card, but unfortunately it's a rare card. Leonin Vanguard. You start out with, I think, 3. I think it's a black-white deck, which gives you 3 Leonin Vanguards. And for ground-based troops, especially if you couple this with a Johnny's Pride Mate, and if you get the nuts draw of Healer's Hawk, Leonin Vanguard, and a Ionis Pridemate. Anyone who has played that combination of sequence of cards knows how happy you are when the stars align and you get all the three of them, and for some reason your opponent doesn't have removal for your Pridemate and you kill them in like 3-4 turns. Really great card for that kind of archetype. If you're going for ground-based kind of standard troops, I think this is a great card. Moment of Triumph. There's a couple of these buff cards for 1 white, and I think this one is the best one out of them. And for one very particular reason, I think this is best. If you run Healer's Hawk and you run the Mythic Angel, which we are going to get to in a second, which gives you an angel whenever you gain 5 life, this works really great with that card. For instance, let's say you're at you have a Healer's Hawk out, for some reason the entire board has been wiped out except for the Healer's Hawk. You get a hit in and you cast Moment of Triumph, and then you put an angel down. What's going to happen is your Healer's Hawk is a life linker, it gets +2/+2, so that equals 3 life gained. You gain 2 life from Moment of Triumph, that means 5 life. When you drop your angel down, even if you drop it at the end of combat, or at your second main phase, I mean, it's going to produce an angel for you, and you're right back in the game. Basically, even if you've been wiped out, you can still get back with this card, a Healer's Hawk. It's a very particular sequence of plays, but it still happens from time to time, and it's still good on its own. Like if someone puts out a flying blocker, you can use this as a combat trick, or you can use this as a finisher for 2 life. Has a lot of usages. How many you should run is up to you, but I think this is a great card in the common slot. Really great card. Sky Marcher Aspirant. I've seen this a lot in white weenie decks, and it's actually better than I initially thought, because I thought Ascend was going to be harder than it is for a white weenie deck, but it actually happens from time to time, so it's actually relevant, this ability. I thought it was like never going to happen with white weenie decks, but it happens from time to time. Here, by the way, is the Rustwing Falcon that I talked about earlier. That completes your 12 card 1 mana flyers set. Really a good card for that archetype. Moving on, Snubhorn Sentry, another one of those cards which I didn't think, because I kind of undervalued Ascend a bit. It has a great body of 0/3. It sounds bad, but if you can get Ascend, then you get amazing value, a 3/3 for 1 white mana. And also, if you buff this, it's really hard to get swept by most removal spells. The Deafening Clarion doesn't hit this, the Golden Demise doesn't hit this. Really has some staying power. Other than that, this card is a card I suggest you not run. There's so many better cards than this, which gives +2/+2, which is not conditional on blocking or being blocked or something. This is just a shitty card. For instance, this card right next to it is just better, but I would still recommend Moment of Triumph over Take Heart, especially if you're running that angel. If you have some other strategy in mind, then maybe Take Heart could be better for you, but in most strategies, unless you're going for some kind of spin-off token strategy, I don't think this would be better than Moment of Triumph. Oh, another +2/+2 for vampires. I don't even know if I would run this even if I had vampires. First Strike is relevant, but it's I don't know. I think the Moment of Triumph is still better, even for vampire decks. Oh, speaking of good cards, Dauntless Vanguard. If you're going for that white weenie, put a lot of, you know, I think honestly, I think Dauntless Vanguard fits into anything. Like it fits into a deck where you're going something like auras. It fits in, yeah, like you could even play this in like a control deck just as a finisher because it's so hard to get rid of this card. I think this card has changed a lot of the meta game, and like a lot of people have to, you know, run minus toughness abilities just to get rid of this card. That's how meta changing and good this card actually is. Amazing card. You can't go wrong picking up 4 of this card. I think. Johnny's Pridemate. I think this is initially, like if you're a new player, you're going to overvalue this card, I think, and if you're a seasoned veteran, you're going to undervalue this card. This card is actually decently good, I think. It does require you to run life link or something that gives you life, you know, in your deck, but there's so many cards which kind of accidentally gives you life, even though you would run them like even without the life linking ability, like the Moment of Triumph and the previous 1/1 which becomes a 2/2 during your attacker's phase and gives you 1 life. There's the Healer's Hawk. There's a lot of good cards which gives you life, which are good in of themselves, and that I think makes a Johnny Pridemate really good. And sometimes it just becomes too big for your opponent to deal with. It will of course eat every removal every time because everyone on Magic Magic Arena seems to hate this card, and it's like everyone uses removal the first time, you know, at the first opportunity they get to get rid of this. So don't expect this to stay, but expect it to eat their best removal, and if it's done that, I think it's done its job. That's what it's supposed to do. It's just a 2-drop after all. So Bishop Soldier. It's a consideration if you're going for like a lifelink strategy. It's good in the common slot, but it's not a card I really like. It's basically only, I would use it as a placeholder until I got some better uncommons. But for that purpose it works fine, I think. While you're building up your deck, you can use this. You get like 2 or 3 of these in the black-white starter deck, I think. Moving on, Dawn of Hope, great card, but unfortunately a rare. Cavalier Drill Master, you get 2 of these, and I don't think you need to build more than 2, even if you're doing a white weenie deck. The problem with this is that it has 1 toughness, I think. If it had 2 toughness and buffed something when it came into play, it would be a really good card. Now it's usually too weak by itself, even though the buff is really nice. Getting +2, +0 and first strike on something is really good, especially for a common card. Moving on, Knights of Grace. This is like the obvious card to include in your deck when you've got your 4-pack of Benalias in your deck, because it's a knight and because it's a great knight. That's first strike, hexproof from black, and any player controls a black permanent. That's of course not going to be relevant in a white weenie deck, but against a black deck it's highly relevant. And the first strike, coupled with it being a knight, coupled with hexproof from black, which protects it against a lot of removal, makes this card really strong. Really good consideration for a Benalia deck. Knight's Pledge. You get, as you see, 2 of these from the tutorial starter decks. If you played through the tutorial, you're going to be very familiar with this card because you draw it all the time in the tutorials. And I think it's actually better than I thought. Like, I wouldn't suggest, this is not a card that you want to have, you know, long term in your deck when you really kitted it out with all the rares and uncommons and everything, but for your initial starting deck, when you're starting out, I think this is a great common slot card until you get those better cards. So it's a great, you know, placeholder card for what it is. Martyr of Dusk. I would probably only run this in a vampire deck. I've seen this run in a lot of different decks, but for me a 2/1 which creates a 1/1, so to me it seems just a worse Haunted Witness, except it's a vampire. So if you have a vampire, I mean it's a 2/1, but that's rarely relevant, I would say. If you're running a vampire deck, this could be great. If not, probably avoid this card. Moving on. Citra Big Griffin. This card I've been so impressed with, actually. It's so great to drop down, and the amount of removal that it eats, there's so many decks that have trouble against this card because there's so many 1/1 flyers and 1/2 flyers, but it's very few 2/2 flyers, especially for 2. And a lot of the time people either have to, you know, trade very unfavorably with this, or they have to remove it. It's actually a really good card, and it's just a common, so getting a playset of this as soon as possible for your deck is a really good idea. Even if you're going for some other strategy long term, this is a great placeholder, and it's one of the best card in the white flyer strategy that I mentioned earlier. This card is basically only good if you're going to bring in other colors and planeswalkers, and you're a control deck. But in that case, it's actually a good card. If you have an abundance of rare cards for some reason, this works really great in the white flyers archetype. And actually this ability, I thought that this ability was kind of useless, but it's actually good against the best decks in the current metagame for some reason. The two best, arguably, it's maybe not, maybe Jeskai is one of the best decks, I don't know, but the ones that I've seen a lot of is you know, Golgari decks and Drake decks, and this card basically owns both of those archetypes. If you remove all the sorceries and instants, then the drakes become baby drakes, and if you remove everything from a Golgari deck, they can't use their finds, their creatures which spawns depending on how many creatures cards they have in their graveyard don't work. All their creatures become shittier. Hopefully you don't have to use this ability. Hopefully you can raise those decks down. But if the game goes late, this is actually a relevant ability, and you can, as this is like an instant speed, you can answer any of the spells that the Golgari deck plays with this. Yeah, but it's still a rare card, so it's still very niche, so not something, unless you're committed to the strategy, I wouldn't suggest building that card. As for other cards, Sunhome Stalwart, I think you get 3 of these. Another great card. It has Mentor, First Strike. Yeah, just solid white, uncommon. The only problem with this card is that, well, firstly it costs 2 mana, and usually in the white weenie kind of strategies you want mostly 1 mana costing cards, and it competes with a lot of good 2 costing cards, so it doesn't see as much play as it maybe should, considering it's in a starter deck, and it's actually really strong for what it is. Another problem, of course, I see with this is that most creatures in white weenie decks already have 2 power, so you need to buff this first for it to buff something, so it's very situational in that sense. Yeah, Tocatli Honor Guard, great card to own Golgari with if you've got the rare cards to spend on this. If you don't, then you don't really need it, and it basically only fits in kind of a white weenie deck or some kind of control deck, I guess. But if you're going for a mono white deck, then this is not the first rare card I would pick up. It's basically only a way to own the Golgari deck. Really hard. Triumph for Gerard is a decently good card. The problem with it is that it competes with a lot of good 2-drops. There's so many good 2-drops in the white weenie archetype that it doesn't really fit in a good way, even though the abilities are actually quite strong. I think you get flying, first strike, and lifelink at the third part of the saga, and I compare this to something like the +2/+2 aura. I think this is just a strict upgrade to that. It does take one turn for you to get the full benefit. You only get +1/+1, but at the same time this makes you more resilient to removal, and also having that lifelink is so important, I think, in the current very aggressive metagame. So if this fits into your deck, if you have if you can fit this into your deck, then it's a great card. That's basically all I have to say. Banalish Marshal, of course, another great white weenie card. Unfortunately rare for some reason. I think this, I don't know why this is rare. Really, I think that it's weird that it doesn't feel rare, this ability, to me at all. It feels like this should be an uncommon card, but unfortunately it's a rare. Other great cards. Nope, not seeing anything here. Moving on. History of Benalia. This is, if you're going for a ground-based strategy, the standard white weenie deck, or I think this is such a great card that you could, like, even if you build this, even if you're not going to build a white weenie deck, this is such a great card to have in the future. I think this will be played for years to come. That if you're going to play Arena for a long time, then you can never go wrong with this card. That's how good I think this is. Even like the thing with this card is that even if someone removes the enchantment, you still got your 2/2 knight, so you always go 2 for 1 at least with this card. So it's great in every possible way. Not much else to add. Moving on. Is there something here? Yeah, there's a great rare card. Another great rare card. Not much else. Militia Bugler. I'm not. I think this is a decent card, but the problem with this card is that if you don't hit a creature card, like if you have, usually in these kinds of decks, I feel like you have a fair amount of instant sorceries and lands. So like when Militia Bugler bricks, it's kind of horrible. That's the problem with it, I think. But when it hits, it's a solid card. Resplendent Angel. This is another card which I wouldn't, since it's such an aggressively costed card, I think this will be relevant for a long time. I wouldn't have any trouble spending my mythic wildcards on Resplendent Angel. It works amazingly. This is like the one of the cards which I think really shines in the All Flyers white weenie deck, which I'm going to post a video of at some point. such a great ability, and if you get to the really late game, it even has the +2/+2 lifelink to create its own angels, which is surprisingly relevant a lot of the times, because sometimes you flood out with your lands, and if you can get in a hit with this, your chances of winning increase a lot. Really great card. And that's, I think, all that the cards I wanted to talk about in White Weenie. So if we go back to the starting screen here, what would I suggest you build? I would suggest, unless you really want to invest into White Weenie, but if you're more curious in checking out the archetype, and if you're not that keen on spending your rare wildcards on this, I think it's a very safe bet to go with finishing out your 3 Healer's Hawk with a last Healer's Hawk, building all the common flyers for 1, the Rustwing Falcon, and using your uncommon slot for 4 Guards for battle, and then just and the last. Okay, so to summarize, this was a bit messy. Finish your Healing Hawk package, then also finish up your you get two flyer hawks, finish off that to a full playset, build 4 Rustwing Falcons, and 4 Guard for battles. With that and the cards that you get from the starter decks, you're going to have enough cards to create a really good, effective, only flyers White Weenie deck. And also, for that deck, I would suggest going with the 3/3 Angel. I think it's called Resplendent Angel. Works really great in that deck, and it's a great card overall. Fits in a lot of decks, and will probably be future safe, I think, because it's so aggressively costed. So yeah, that's my recommendation for White. Thank you for watching.